Hey everybody, it's Sabrina. Welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I'm going to update my reading journal with all the different reviews for my April books. So it was a total of 12 books, and I also had, I think it was four books where I could not shorten the review. So I'm going to have those books take up 2 slots, and it actually turned out much better than I thought. So I started off the month with a graphic novel called Ducks. I was actually trying to finish it in March so I could get 16 books, but I didn't. So I don't know how I stumbled on this book, but it's about a woman named Kate Beaton. I think I'm saying that right. And she worked in the oil sands in Canada. And it was really fascinating because she really gave an honest portrayal of how this particular line of work is almost like behind as far as like work policies and their treatment of women. And it was very interesting, but also at some points hard to read. And it also jumped around at different points. So I gave it like 3.75 out of 5, but I still think it's very interesting to read, that specific piece of Canadian history. The next one was The Bookstore, and it was supposed to be the history of the bookstore in America, and I was really looking forward to this. I had waited a long time at my library to get the audio edition, and I was so disappointed. I felt like it was more of like short stories about different branches of the bookstore, if that makes sense. Like, it wasn't chronological, like this is how the bookstore started. I mean, the book kind of started off that way, talking about Benjamin Franklin, but then it just kind of went all over the place, and it was hard to keep track of different things. And so yeah, it felt like short stories strung together. So I only gave it 3 stars. Next up was And So I Roar, and that was one of my all-time favorite books for this year. It's definitely going to be in the top 5. I absolutely loved it. I loved what is it called? My Louding Voice. I think that was the first book. But this book was just so special. I don't know if I'm going to say the main character's name right. It's Adunya, I think. She's a 14-year-old girl in Nigeria who is adamant that she's going to have an education. She's not going to be 14 and married off to an older man. So she decides to take action. And and the ending, like, I felt like I was physically there in the ending, and it was just a powerful ending. So awesome. So I gave the book a 5 stars. I'm actually surprised I didn't have more to say about the book, and like it didn't take up 2 slots, but I really, really love this book, and I think everybody should read Louding Voice first and then read this one as well, because it was just, Adunya is, I hope I'm saying her name right, but she is definitely one of my all-time favorite characters in a book ever. Like, we all need to be as powerful as she is. Next up was Tidy Up Your Life from Tidy Dad. I guess he's a dad that lives in New York and has a small apartment with his 2 daughters and a wife. And he just gave some overall pretty good tips on keeping house and managing house. One of my favorite tips was, as simple as this seems, I'd never thought of it, but having a snack box ready to go with snacks that are not snacks that are going to melt, because the summer can be hot, and also just tackling one area a day. Okay, so the next book, this is the first one that's going to take up 2 boxes, and it is Sunrise on the Reaping, where we get Hamish's story, and I absolutely loved this book. But I will say this book was absolutely heartbreaking, and the way that Hamish is in the Hunger Games trilogy, that series, completely makes sense now. This character went through so much tragedy and so much loss, and the villains in Hunger Games are just absolutely some of the worst villains. And I think we can all say that the Capitol and President Snow are the villains, and they make Hamish's life very, very difficult. And it's just, I love this novel. It's an emotional story, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I felt like he was a warrior and had a lot of strength to just keep going and challenge the status quo. despite all the different things that were thrown at him through the Capitol and President Snow. And there was a lot more complexity to Haymitch as a person and as, a character, and his sacrifices just to survive. So thoroughly enjoyed this book, and I'm so glad that Suzanne Collins wrote this book. So with the extra space, I was able to add in some washi tape and some stamping with stars. I also stamped favorite and the rating right below the book cover. And as you can see, I did not add in ratings or genres. I will figure that out next time because I have the pages in the back that I can update and share with you when I'm ready. But moving on to the next book, Dinner for Vampires by Bethany Joy Lentz. Lentz, I think is her last name. But she worked on One Tree Hill, and I've never seen that show. But her story was utterly fascinating. She was this huge, TV star, but at the same time, she was trapped in a cult, and nobody knew. She was able to keep it secret from, kind of for a long time. And I wrote that it was fascinating how, the influencer, the cult leader had such a way with words and to draw you in and kind of have you embrace their way of thinking. That's what I've always kind of thought with cults, and that certainly was with Bethany Joy Lentz. And she found this Bible study group, and that's how simple it started off. But then it just became more than that, and it became her sense of family and a place that she could come, to find what she felt was missing. And then over time, the group became very much cult-like and taking over every aspect of her life. And the thing that helped her was just knowing that she had to do something to make her child's life better. And I loved listening to the story. It was fascinating. And I think I listened to it in just 2 days. So I added OMG stamped across the bottom because I felt like that worked perfect. I also had the small little spot right there in between the two sticker sheets. So I knew it wasn't a lot of room, but I decided to stamp audio, and then I can just make it work. It kind of looked a little smushed, the stamp, but that's okay. And I will color all of those in a little bit. And of course, my rating was 5 stars. Like I said, I couldn't stop listening to it. I find, like I said, cults very interesting. So I'm going to color in the book for favorite on the sunrise. I'll color that purple since the book is purple, and then fill in the other colors for the various stamped pieces. I love coloring in, and I love that this journal can handle the coloring in. I will say that this journal, remember I found a journal called Bunk? Yeah, Bunk, B-U-K-E. And it's comparable to Archer and Olive in the weight of the paper and the fact that it can handle, markers, but I don't know how it's going to hold up the rest of the year. It's absolutely bulging and it barely closes with the elastic, so not sure how it's going to work, but so far it hasn't broke, so we'll just keep on going. And right now I'm starting on the book, The Road to Tender Hearts, and working on the audio, The Bones Beneath My Skin, or something like that. It's from TJ Klein. So I'm starting on 2 new books. I'd love to know what you guys are reading if you want to let me know in the comments section. Okay, so the next book was Secret Book of Flora Lee. That was a recommended book as part of my 15 books, 15 friends. Hazel and Flora are relocated from their homes in London in 1939 as part of the Operation Pied Piper. And Flora winds up disappearing one day as they're playing on the River Thames. And 20 years later, Hazel discovers a book that features the magical story she told her sister. So now she has to kind of figure out what does that mean? Can she find the answers to the mystery about what happened to her sister? It's a wonderful book. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.25. Next up was Nettle and Bone. I really thoroughly enjoyed this book, and I wish somebody would make it into a movie. It had a lot of really incredible characters that are just, you're not going to forget these characters. So like a grave witch who's sassy and curmudgeon-y, and a demonic chicken who's the witch's familiar, a former knight, and a godmother who cannot do her job and her different spells go wrong. And then there's Mara, and she is a really tough character and determined to help her sister. So thoroughly enjoyed it, but I would say I would read the book instead of listening to the audio. So definitely a fun book, and I'm glad that I finally read the book, listened to the book, because it had been on my list for a while. Okay, Deepened by Ali Hazelwood. This book caught me off guard because I read the synopsis, but it didn't really go with the synopsis about what happened, and I loved that, and it lived up to the hype, so that was awesome. It was definitely a very spicy romance book. There was a great romance between characters Scarlett and Lucas. They're both college athletes, and Scarlett is a diver coming back after a massive injury. And through a set of interesting circumstances, they come to an arrangement to help both of each other. And then they don't seem like they have anything in common. And then they spend more time together, and it leads to a friendship and then some sizzling chemistry. And I loved it. It was overall a spicy romance about two characters taking a chance on finding their person, which I thoroughly loved. I enjoyed this book, and yeah, definitely lived up to the hype, because I feel like sometimes when you read those hyped up books, it's like, is this really going to be worth the hype or not? But this one definitely was. And I even found some washi tape that was like water themed, so that worked perfect. And I stamped friends to lovers. I colored in the background blue. I don't really like the background blue. I felt like it should have been a lighter color, but that's okay. I also stamped a few hearts, like a heart border below the book cover, just to add just a little bit of decoration. Okay, so I'm wrapping up the Deepened, and then I'm going to skip to Famous Last Words by Gillian McAllister. And I will say that I think I'm going to be done with her books, unless I listen to them. But this is my second book by her, and it was just a struggle. Like, I really couldn't get into the book, and yeah, it probably would have been better on audio. Camille's life is on the verge of change during the summer solstice, and then her husband makes a series of choices that change their lives. From there, it delves into what's going to happen after the summer solstice and the fallout from that day. There is great themes of sacrifice for your family and what you do for love and the lasting impact of one choice, but I just struggled with finding the story interesting and even making time to read the book. So it took me forever to get through this book, and it was the same thing with her last book that I read. I don't remember what it's called, but I'm going to take a break from this author, unless it's audio, like I said. Okay, the next book was a memoir by Sherry Frank, and it's called The House of My Mother, and it was really hard to listen to this book sometimes, and also just because it's deeply rooted in trauma, and trauma from a parent to a child, which is really hard for me to listen to. But Sherry Frank had a fascinating and devastating childhood. Her mother basically exploited all the children by putting them on YouTube. So as Sherry is trying to grow into teenagehood and find herself, her mother is putting her on the internet. And her mother also had a lot of mental health struggles that were never dealt with. They were made worse by having more and more children. And the mom didn't want to stop having children because that's kind of how she felt that was her purpose as a Mormon. And this is just what the book was telling me, or this is what I learned from the book. I could be wrong, but the mom had a lot of issues, and then she fell into a friendship with another woman that made things 10 times worse. And so it was just a lot of abuse for the siblings and for Sherry, and it was just a hard book to listen to, but I feel like Sherry Frank is very powerful and took charge of breaking the cycle. So 5 stars for that book. The last one for the month is Always You and Me. It does have a trope that I don't necessarily like, but in this case, the book kind of worked. So I gave it 4.5 stars. It's a story of love, grief, heartbreak. Lily is getting ready to say goodbye to the love of her life, Adam, and then he says that she needs to try to reconcile with Josh. And it's a great story about them coming back together. So I hope you guys enjoyed this quick go through of my April books and the different things I had to say about the books. I would love a thumbs up or a subscribe if you are new to my channel. Have a great day. Bye.